bum ba da da dee da da dee da 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 dum bum ba dee da dee da da ba da 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 ba dum bum ba da dee da 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 dee da 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 dum bum ba da dee da da ba da 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 dum.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome to this edition of the Tuesday telecast. I'm excited to bring on Julia Norton, who is a coach who will help you find your voice. And this is something that sounds maybe um, a little bit woo, or maybe it sounds like exactly right for you. But when you hear what it is that she does and how it helps people, you will be surprised. And so I want to bring her in to the house. Let's go. Hello, Julia, and welcome to the Tuesday telecast. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me on, Lydia. It's lovely to be here.
So this is this is really kind of exciting because I've known you somewhat through a group that we're together in, and you do this amazing work with voices. That's something that I've struggled with in the past, and yet music is my first language, and
Mm.
speaking has been very important to me, especially since not everybody thinks in music. So
Mm.
I love what you're doing because it speaks to me like, oh, that would have been lovely. So
Mm.
I just and for you in the audience, Julia actually helps you find your voice and use your voice and your connection to your vocal being. So let's hear it from you. How did you get into this work?
Oh, um, so I was one of those people who I think I was just kind of born singing a little bit, It's just like
Me
I always
too.
was, yeah, just singing. And sang around, squealed, jumped on the furniture, apparently, according to my mother. And I sang. My mum was a singer while she was doing the dishes, while she was folding the laundry, while she was ironing, right? We used to
Mm.
have a little ritual, she and I, of watching the Shirley Bassey special on a Friday night, which was this great the show with Shirley Bassey, who was sang Goldfinger, right? For those that aren't as old as me, who sang Goldfinger and the Bond theme, such a big sparkly dress coming down a staircase, the whole thing. And that is so encapsulated in this tiny little special treat jar of memories of being with my mom and watching this amazing singer. Um, my village school, my first school, had a lot of music in it. And so I was playing recorders, and I remember trying to learn how to play the recorder, and it was hard. And my mum said, you can do it. You can do the recorder. It's fine. And I was so glad I did because that kind of opened up a world of music to me. But really, the clincher was when we moved house at one point, we moved to this small Tudor village just outside Oxford in the Oxfordshire countryside. And it was a rough time. It was a rough time for me personally, for our family. We were definitely outsiders. It was tricky. And
Indeed.
in this village was a church, and it was, I think, originally built in the 1400s and had a new add-on in the 1600s, right? So pretty modern. So, but what I'm saying is that the graveyard was full of stones that had, F's for S's, they were all, it was so old and so gargoyle bedecked and had big elm trees in the cemetery. It was a really
Mm.
amazing old village church.
Beautiful.
And my mum and I sang in the church choir. Now, for those, it's a little different because I live in the States now. I live in California, and I always feel like I have to preface this thing of saying, when you're Church of England in the UK, it doesn't necessarily mean you're a religious person. It's quite secular in many ways.
Right.
So, my mum and I were in it for the singing. Although I think actually, we were both pretty into the God stuff as well at that point, as much as felt good. Um, but it was a church where the choir master really worked our voices. And he took my childlike, open, airy, free voice and kind of crystallized it down into one of those choristers' voices, the pure tone of a cathedral boys choir tone. That's what he wanted. And I remember that action really clearly, of him
Wow.
taking my voice and making it kind of
Not
smaller.
spread, but
And yeah,
go,
yes,
yeah,
yes,
forward.
because that's what he wanted,
Yes.
because we were singing a lot of early music and um really close crunchy harmonic stuff, which I'm sure you'd appreciate what I'm talking about. And that stuff just lit me up inside. It made me
Mm-hmm.
cry, it made me feel alive. I just loved the harmonics of it all, and singing with my mom was great too. So I spent a lot of
Mm-hmm.
time in this church choir, um and that was kind of my salvation, like getting me out of the house a little bit was important. And then so I always knew that singing was more than just sounding pretty, because of the emotional thing that was happening to me. And my brother used to sing me to sleep as well from time to time. So, and none of these people in my family were kind of get out on the stage singers. These are just people who had beautiful voices, just kind of, and that was just that, you know. Um, and then fast forward a lot of years, just to tell you why I got into this in the first place, trying to kind of stay on your question. There wasn't any musical theatre in my high school. What would have been a high school here, like secondary school. There just wasn't any. Um, I think they'd had theatre, but the sixth formers used to do Shakespeare, and then it got moved, and so it never really happened for me.
Mm.
And so there wasn't any way for me. There wasn't band or school musicals and all that stuff that I hear people talk about here.
Yeah.
And so there was this void for me. And so I ended up kind of writing some of my own songs and joining rock bands as soon as I could when I was like 16, 17. And then I became a folk singer, and I sang on the streets with a hat a lot. I left home quite young, and I sang Scottish and Irish ballads and things,
Mm.
old English folk songs, and did the festival circuit for a while. And during this time, I was taking some workshops with other people as well, learning Bulgarian styles and African stuff. We were full in the anti apartheid movement at that time as well. And I started teaching voice workshops. I thought, I can do this. So I think at 19, I ran my first voice workshop in a local community center. And about 35 people showed up, who were all probably twice my age.
Right.
And I was teaching them. I thought I'm just going to teach them some harmony songs. It's easy. I'm just going to do it by ear because that's how I teach, and that's going to be fine. And and so I taught this song. I can't remember. I think it was a Bulgarian thing in a beautiful kind of close harmony. And I noticed people were crying. And I'm like, oh, 19-year-old Julia, oh, I don't know what to do with that. Like, I don't feel qualified. And then I taught them a breathing exercise with some really deep breathing that I'd learned from a Czech gypsy singer at another workshop. It was all very
Mm.
magpie-ish, as voice
Yeah.
teaching often is very like, oh, a magpie that and a little magpie here. And you're trying to give credit as you go along. But that's kind of how I
Right.
feel like that's how a lot of vocal tradition has been taught, right? So, so I was teaching this deep breathing exercise, more tears from more people. And I basically, at the end of the workshop, I thought, I need to get trained in how to hold the feeling because I can, I know how powerful this work is. And I don't know who is offering that kind of training. So it took me about, I suppose it would be then another 7 or 8 years before I found the training. I went and did an English degree. I was doing that because, of course, I couldn't do a music degree because I didn't have any experience. Um, I did an English degree. And for my English degree, my final paper was women's expression through folk music. So I've always managed to work stuff in, and I sang a bunch on my tests and things. And then I trained in voice movement therapy in London, which is the discipline that taught me how to basically create a container for people to safely explore their full voice and their full selves. And so that's what I trained in my late 20s in London.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
You came around to and you answered my questions as they were coming up, or
Oh,
my
sorry.
I'm that's perfect. It was interesting, and that you recognized at that early age that, oh, you needed to know how to create a container,
Yeah.
and that was important, so that people, because people like we like our barriers.
Mm,
We want to remove them, but when they're gone, we say, what do I what do I push against? What do I lean on?
mm,
What do I
mm,
we
mm.
need that container, that those spiritual boundaries that keep our feelings safe inside and
Yes.
allow us to be free in that space.
Yes.
And you recognized that right there on the spot, experientially. And there's no better way to learn, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
It's,
Yeah, that's right. And it
yeah.
feels like it is that thing, isn't it? Of especially in this kind of work where we're really trying to tap into, our soul's calling, our true selves, however you want to express that really deep connection to self that goes beyond all the conditioning and all the learned behaviors,
Mm,
that we want to create a womb in which to do that.
yeah. Mm,
So so every container feels like it's a replication of that. This is a safe place to get nurtured
mm,
and to be totally yourself. Um, yeah, and so I think that's what I try and provide for my clients. And we were talking about like the Zoom connection energy thing before you turn the recording on, but there's that thing of, it feels like the number one most important thing is to be able to create that holding container, like you say, so that people can test the edges. They can go as far as they want to and know that they're being held, so that, they can try stuff out and not be judged. You know, it just
yes,
does feel super important. Yeah.
it is super important. I learned this, the importance of this when, as somebody who's a free improvisationalist, and that I always created that container. That container was inherent for
Mm.
me, but I used to go around and teach other people how to freely improvise. And some of these, and in any discipline, but I
Mm-hmm.
dealt very much with musicians, and
Mm.
musicians who were very seasoned musicians, and many of them who could improvise in jazz, where they have a container.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there it is, it's there, but without having a chart or having something that
Mm-hmm.
they could. And what I found was that just getting people to free improvise for the first time by basically throwing them a figurative scarf and they could do whatever they wanted with that scarf. They could put it over their head, they could put it over their eyes, they could wear it as a
Yeah.
sash, they could wear
Yeah.
wear it as a toga, they could throw it on the ground and walk on it, whatever they wanted to do. But just having that scarf was so it gave them the thing that they needed to play with and to experience within and to flop against and to hide under and all those things we need containers for, and we don't know how to make those for ourselves.
Oh, that's so great, Lydia. And I love the because that's so true, right? When we are so I used to sing in a jazz duo for a bit when I first moved to San Francisco, and it was just me and an upright bass player.
Mm.
And we had so much fun. We had so much. We got fired from our jobs, but we had a lot of fun at the time. But we would do things like we would use the container. So we were both into free improv, right? That was like, and but you've got two basically single voice lines like working
Right.
together. And so we'd take a jazz standard like say Night and Day, and we'd sing it through once, just what so people could get their drinks and relax and think, oh yeah, I know what's going to happen now. And then the second time through, we would go off on some crazy journey. She would do whatever she wanted to do, and I would just take the lyrics. So the lyrics were my container, but I would
Mm.
sing whatever I wanted. And then we would see how we could find our way back into the song to come back for a reprise, right? But if we hadn't had the container of the lyrics and for her some general structure of the song,
Yeah.
but it sounded like when I listened back to some of the recordings somewhat recently, I was like, that sounds like complete bedlam. But we were having a great time, but we needed the container because otherwise you're like, well, where does it end? Where
It
do I
just would have been awkward and weird. Yes.
Yeah, super awkward and weird, but yeah, it was fun. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So fast forward to
Yes.
today. What's going on today with this, and how is this? Well, for some people out in the audience, I imagine, for someone out there, maybe not so much in my audience, but there are a lot of people who don't believe that anyone who does anything with music gets paid. And unfortunately, a lot of musicians don't think that either,
Mm,
but
mm, mm,
when in fact we have just as much schooling, if not
mm,
more,
mm,
than
mm,
many disciplines that people
mm.
think of that are making money. And money aside, that's just kind of a given that we actually are able to put a roof over our
Mm.
heads. What is it that you do that people need?
Oh, that's a juicy question. I think I think really people have always come to me, whether it's when I first qualified in London, when I first did this training, I had a lot of people coming to me with abuse histories and eating disorder histories, and because it's super throat, mouth, expression related. Yeah. So I worked a lot in that area, but now I like to think of how I work is almost like on a fader from one side to the other of really technical work. Like I find voice actors come to me who are doing really vocally demanding roles for video games and script dying. They're just like, okay, you fell off a cliff and now your legs are on fire and you die slower, die louder, die string it out, all these kinds of. So there's
Yeah.
the technical stuff and helping people find their mix range and all that kind of like super super technical stuff. And then there's the probably the majority of my work, which is people find me because I have always felt deep inside me, they'll say, I want to sing or I want to get on stage, or I want to
I want that feeling.
whatever that is, you know, that just that 7 year old in them that wanted to sing or get on a stage and was told it wasn't sensible or the right career choice, or you better be an accountant or a real estate agent, or and so people come to me to basically feed their soul, to nurture that creative impulse that was never fed, right? So I suppose that's what we're doing, is we're feeding that creative impulse and that deep connection with self. Yeah.
If not the various wounds that we may have, the various trauma, but if we put that aside and we look
Mm,
at the cultural norm, I call this cultural momentum that the
mm,
stories we have, and a lot of that cultural momentum comes through our education systems,
mm,
which are telling us those stories of
mm.
you need to be sensible, as if this isn't sensible
Mm-hmm.
when we look back, where everything that we're equipped with, and all the curiosity and all the ways in which we explore our voice, and
Mm,
all the ways in which we wander about and play with things, co-create things, bang up against things,
mm-hmm.
find out, we're told no, that's when it's really actually incredibly valid, but it didn't fit into this industrial society that we were
That's
in,
right.
where you have to fit into the industrial machine. So your value is based on the grade we give you, and the grade will be good if you do exactly what we tell you to do.
Mm.
So what I wonder, I mean, it seems like you resonate with this, and how much are you actually just freeing people from what's stuck behind all that?
Oh, that's kind of all of it, actually. It's kind of
I
all of
wouldn't be
it.
surprised. I would think it would.
Yeah, that's kind of all of it, Lydia, because and I, and I think, from a Jungian perspective, we're looking at this, and I'm sure your audience is super kind of connected with all this idea as well, but this idea that what goes into our persona, and the stuff, the mask that we're showing the world, is what is acceptable in our family, in our community, in our culture in general, and anything else goes into shadow, right?
Mm.
And because it goes into shadow doesn't mean it's bad, but there's a sense of it being,
Oh,
I
yes.
can't do that. It's kind of terrifying to do that. And it's amazing how many levels, how deep that goes, that shadow material. So I feel
Yeah.
like that was like the biggest gift in my training, actually, was this concept of shadow, and understanding that that is actually the rest of myself that got shut in the wardrobe.
Standing
And
there.
my life's journey is opening that closet, right? And
Yes.
getting the shadow out and integrating it and seeing what because the other thing is that when we don't let ourselves express in those ways,
Mhm.
we become resentful of people that do, right? We find ourselves highly triggered by people that do, and we get tighter and flintier and just generally less happy, right? So, yes, in answer to your point, a lot of my work is helping people work with their unconscious material so that they can go back and find the stories from their families, the mottos, the be seen and not heard, or if you haven't got anything nice to say, don't say anything at all, and all that stuff that we're stuffed with, and kind of liberate ourselves by we use
Mm.
like visualizations and authentic movement and journaling and working with dreams so that you can get into that unconscious material, because it's kind of hard to access otherwise, right?
Oh my
I mean,
goodness, yes.
I'm sure that's where you are when you're in music, when you're writing music. The best stuff comes from somewhere else, right? Just in there, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, so exactly, that is what it is.
Oh, how interesting. And the and you're right, just the layers and layers of that, and the
Hmm.
generations and generations
Hmm.
of that. And uh it's not that our parents were bad. They
Nope.
just they thought with all their heart that this was
Yeah.
how they were supposed to love their children, and this is how they
Yes.
were supposed to protect us. And
Right.
this just goes on and on. I was from the seen and not heard um
Mm-hmm.
crowd, and it was definitely um it really affected my journey with my voice. Even
Mm-hmm.
though I was a person on stage, when I was on stage, I would be on stage, and that was a thing. And I was at that time mostly a musician with an instrument, and then I eventually started to free improvise with my voice and my instrument and use my voice a lot more. But
Mm-hmm.
um, both for spoken word and for singing, there was just this idea that if I opened my mouth, people will know how stupid I am, and if I don't, then I might get by. And so just
Yes.
don't open the mouth. And nobody ever thought that they were going to that they should, make sure that I lived a miserable life. It was for
Yeah, no,
my
it's never about
protection.
that. Yeah.
And just getting through all those layers. And,
Mm.
and I don't know how many of you in the audience can identify with this in some way, shape, or form, but I bet you can find yourself somewhere in this. Where is your
Mm.
shadow? Where is
Mm.
what is that thing that you realize that whether you realized it long ago or right now, that just isn't true. That is just it was a story. It was almost
Mm.
like a metaphor to keep you safe, but we internalized and we became it.
Mm. 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 Yeah, it's super interesting, and it is exactly that thing of if we finish sentences like you know, if I go so if you think maybe think about somebody who is in a creative sphere or speaking or has some kind of platform, but they trigger you, right? And then you think of like three adjectives to describe that person, right? And it might be like, and this is the negative kind of side of it, right? So it might be like, oh, mm, they're they're full of themselves and a show off. I'm not doing very well, but a show off and loud, right? And then you think about, well, what are the opposite of those things? Okay. So you might find yourself in the opposite of those things.
Hiding and
Hiding, keeping your
hide.
light under a rock somewhere. And what was the last thing I said? Oh, I can't remember. But you get the gist, right? So you
Yeah.
might find yourself in the opposite. Not only that, you might be if you then ask yourself, how would I feel if somebody thought I was showing off or full of myself? Somebody that I cared about, if they thought that. And like the feeling of horror
Yes. Yes.
is deep, right? If somebody thought I was selfish or, you know, it's deep. It's a deep horror. So, what do I do then so that nobody ever thinks that about me? I keep playing small. I don't take any room, right? I don't take up space. I don't raise my hand in a meeting when I have something to say, right? I don't get up on stage in the open mic just in case anybody could ever think that I was like that. And that's an easy exercise to try to just kind of get just the beginnings of what is under there.
Or perhaps it's a simple exercise. It's
Yes.
probably not easy.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, good. Yeah, it's a simple exercise to get to some juicy stuff.
I love when I talk to someone on this show and there is some actionable step that's really
Right.
pithy like that and not
Yeah.
and not difficult in a like you can sit and do this, but
Yeah.
will you sit and do this?
Yes.
Will you walk and do this? Will you, it don't,
Yeah.
doesn't matter where you do it. Taking a good walk and doing this is actually
Yes.
a
Walking is
marvelous time
great.
to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely have my best ideas when I'm walking or gardening. Excuse me.
Yes.
I drank coffee this morning, which I shouldn't have done because coffee makes me a little froggy. So I apologize. Mm,
That's all right. I water is
yes.
free and copious and we should have it.
Yes. Exactly.
The gardening reminds me that I have a funny thing that most people don't know. A couple of people do, but and that's that I have I have a little bit of trouble or I find a little bit of disconnection when I'm talking on the telephone.
Mm,
Um, and it's quite difficult for me to actually hear if I'm not looking at somebody directly or so having a screen is helpful and I can get the whole thing, but just hearing the
yeah.
detached voice is hard. And I found that the thing that worked really well for me, and I used to do this even if I was having a business meeting on the phone or
Mhm.
whatever, I would just put the phone on my ear and go out and sink my hands in the garden. And all of a sudden,
Mm,
everything was very clear.
yes.
There's
Yes.
something that in being human, we're not just floating here by ourselves. We're not a single thing, not attached to any of the energy around. And when we actually ground ourselves to the energy that's here, then our voice is freer, our dancing, our laughter, and our ability to listen. And some of us are can connect more. I think I can connect more easily when I'm making music, but listening, I needed that extra grounding.
Yes, I love that. That's a great insight and something to, that you discovered that about yourself and thought one day, oh, I have a business call. I'm gonna actually go and do some weeding in my vegetable patch while I have this talk.
Right, right.
Right? That's
It's so,
what a
as
great thing
opposed to
to
avoiding it or
yes.
thinking, oh, I have to pay attention. I have to pay attention. I have to just,
Yes.
what is that about? Whatever it is, that's my
Yeah.
thing. It's not going to, you're not all going to relate to that, but there
Yeah.
is something that you might be avoiding or have avoided in the past and you notice that something worked for it, but so do it, embrace it.
Yes. That's right, right? Because it's about uh not necessarily following the rules that have been laid down before us, but finding the thing that works for us and for the people that we love and our community and and I think whenever we choose connecting with the earth, breathing the air, going I'm into birds at the moment. I'm trying to learn as many new birds as I can. I found a burrowing owl last week. Well, my husband did actually. It was
Oh,
so sweet. They
fun.
are so tiny, by the
They
way.
are
They're
tiny.
so tiny and I'd never seen one before. So I'm getting quite lit up by that. And I think it just makes everything, especially when everything is a little frazzly around us. Let's say
Yeah.
that our connection to the earth and the birds and the plants and everything is way more important.
Yeah.
And just to kind of dip back into that shadow thing as well of the layers, you don't have to do it all at once either, right?
No.
You work at your own pace and you just do what is available to you, and just understand that. And like layers of dirt, right? Each layer is going to bring new treasure, and then you can wash your hands and have a cup of tea and have a little break, right? And then integrate the next thing. Mm,
Yes. Yes. It's all, there's so many ways to access the different things that we
yeah.
need. but it seems like a sea of uncertainty
Mm,
when we are just looking at, I don't feel like I fit, I don't feel like I belong, I'm stressed, I'm we stop being able to see all of these things
mm,
around us that can bring us to our own self. And once we connect to that self,
yeah.
we actually can go back out in our full in our fullness and our passion, our purpose, our and just our contentment,
Mm,
our excitement and our
mm,
curiosity.
mm,
There's
yeah.
so much of what you're talking about that, and as you said, from a Jungian perspective, that's just about um our voice and our psychology, our and our being and our beingness are just all on a platter, and you can take one of them at a time, but they're all there on that platter.
Yes. Yes. Yes, that's right. And I think that that connection with others is so deeply part of this, because I think that's one of the things, obviously, that makes us play small in the first place, is that we are terrified of being thrown out of the tribe, right? We are terrified of being excluded because we don't fit. And what if I say something that people think is stupid? What if I say something that people think, oh, that's a shocking thing she just said? I can't even believe that, you know? Like, and that is that's a play small train into eternity, right? Like there's just like, and yet I would imagine that probably 85, 90% of us in Western civilized, in quotes, world operates on with that fear, right? I don't want
Yeah.
to get I don't want to be seen to be silly or get caught out or say something that people think is too woo, or I was in total denial of my spirituality until fairly recently, which is insane now that I look at it. But once
Yeah.
I kind of uncovered that bit of shadow and integrated it, I was like, oh, I felt so much more like myself, and
Yes.
and cared so much less about what anybody thought about what I said, you know.
Indeed, that it, because really, one of the most freeing things to realize, but it sounds awful at first, is that nobody cares.
Nobody cares. Yes. Yes. Nobody cares.
And
And my meditation teacher quoted David Bowie the other day, which made me love him even more. Um, oh no, love, you're not alone. Right. So that as well. So nobody cares, and you're never alone.
never, never alone. I I want to step back and look at some of what you were saying too about there's what is it in ourselves, what is it in you in the audience that you are concerned about, are because there's going to be something that you really feel the most. Is it, are you concerned that you're going to hurt someone? Are you concerned that you're going to be seen as too woo? Is it, are you
Mm,
concerned that you're going to be seen as aloof or intellectual, or that you think you're
mm,
intellectual and you don't belong there, or what, or ugly or too much or too,
yeah.
what is it? Because that's the very thing. I mean, that's a gift right there. It's the very door you can open and see
Yes.
what's there and why.
Yes. Yes. That's lovely. And you bet you're so great at kind of listing all these layers of, and I can hear all my different clients saying all the different things, right?
Yeah.
And I worked for a long time with women and their expressions of anger. That's what I did my MA thesis on, was women's expression of anger. And part of one of those things was, I'm afraid that if I actually express my rage, I might just decimate my entire town. Right. The rage was so great.
Yeah.
I'm gonna kill people just with my voice, right?
Yeah.
And that's a really that's a really strong one. And also the I don't want to be too much. I don't want to be too much. People are really afraid of that. I constantly battled against feeling unqualified, right?
Mm.
Because I didn't do a music and voice degree because there wasn't music or theater in my school.
Yeah.
So I would constantly feel like I was, you know, trying to fill in the gaps and trying to make sure I knew all the things.
Yeah.
and and which is interesting because I will share with you, I have a podcast called Dark and Twisty Tales. I made it before in like 2017, and it ran for 3 years, and it was like the darkest Grimm's fairy tales I could come up with. And I would tell these stories and then create sound effects and improvise singing over the rhyming parts,
Uh,
and it was very, very dark. And I did that and I felt good about that because I was in my storyteller personality. Then during lockdown, I decided it's time for me to actually share the kind of vocal work I do in a podcast
mm.
because I've been doing it for 25 years at this point. Like, surely I've
Right.
learned something along the way that I could share that somebody else might not know, right?
Right.
And I kid you not, Lydia, I wept in my booth trying to record the first episode. I was so filled with fear, like I'm going to die if I do this. Like I really felt so much terror
Yeah.
because it was me claiming my expertise.
Mm.
That's all. I'd only been doing it for 25 years, right? But the
It's
idea
both
of me,
terrifying and ridiculous at once.
all of that, right?
Yeah.
And I had my husband and my son saying, "You know how to do just." And I'm a voice actor. I'm a professional voice actor,
Right.
also. So it's like extra crazy.
Yeah.
But just that idea of stepping into my power in that way, stepping into my expertise, was terrifying. And so I
Yeah.
absolutely get it when people are like, I cannot get up at the works karaoke and sing Burning Ring of Fire because I'll die. And yet I really want to, you know? I get
Yes. Oh,
it.
I'm right there with you. I'm never a fan of karaoke. I'm like, I don't
This
want to do
karaoke
that.
is tricky, but yes.
Oh my
Mm.
God. But um wow. Yeah, that's wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. The the idea that if we go out there, we suddenly won't belong. What for whatever
Mm.
reason, because we've shown up as incompetent, because we've
Hmm.
shown up as egotistical, hurtful,
Hmm. Hmm.
whatever it is that is our bag of worms, our can of worms, it bag of tricks, can of worms.
I like Bag of Worms. I'm keeping that.
But whatever it is that we have is going to come. And if we were to look at ourselves, would we scoff? Would we have scoffed? Would we scoff
Right.
now to look and say, what is their problem? Just do it. Just show up.
Right.
Just
Right.
but it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah. I mean, I suffered from stage fright for years, which I
Mm,
think is why I work with people helping to overcome stage fright is one of
yeah.
my things. Because I know it so
Yes.
well.
Yes.
And stage fright, performance anxiety, whatever you want to call it, affects so many people.
Yes, it does.
And no, there's no amount of being told, snap out of it, just get on with it. It's not going to help
No,
ever.
it's like I tell people nobody has ever calmed down by being told to calm down.
No. I had somebody do that to me when we were doing a remodel thing recently, and I was just trying to understand something on a plan. And I said, "Well, hang on," because they kept talking over me. And I said, "Hang on, no, what we're talking about this." And they patted my arm and said, "Calm down." Oh, oh my God, that sent me into such a rage. I mean, it's like the opposite.
It's the
It's just the
opposite.
opposite. Yeah.
It's the
Anyway, I don't
opposite.
ever do that.
Yeah. Mm,
Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
there's so much in that performance space. And I this used to be my space. I used to with coaching, free improvisation um and performers. I had a lot of college age performers who just had to
Mm.
get through their, basically their thesis, their performance, that so they could get their
Yeah.
degree, and they knew what they
Yeah.
were doing, and how much was just wrapped up in not being able to get out there. And it, no one's going to be able to tell them, well, you have to do it, so just calm down. It just
Mm.
doesn't work. But it's doesn't that's not everything. The Sometimes people don't realize that they are performing every day. If they want to go to the bank
Mm.
and try to get a loan to start their business
Mm.
or to get a new home, or it's an act of performance.
Mm.
And we can get so dry in the throat, give ourselves all the excuses why we can't do this or that or the other thing. And it's that same performance mindset where it's like we're going to suddenly be thrown out of the thing we
Mm.
most need to do, or thrown out of society even. And
Mm.
we don't have an easy way with our sense of belonging. And we've all
No.
belonged since the time we
Yeah.
were born. If you were born, you
Yeah.
belonged. It's just part of being human. You belong. But
Mm.
we have this uneasy thought that maybe we don't.
Yes. And I think that in a performing, the getting on stage in front of people,
Yeah.
we somehow give the audience or the person on the other side of the desk all this power and um, all these motivations. We have no idea, right? So that lovely just like me meditation is super super helpful, right? Just to remember that that person, and obviously always kind of imagine that you're connecting with one person at a time. They have fears just like me, right? They get
Yes.
angry just like me. They are hoping for world peace just like me, and just having a few moments to connect with this person so that you're connecting with them, and it's a co-creation of you sharing what it is that you want to share, this gift that you have, and in a way that they can receive it. And I think that certainly unlocked a lot of it for me,
And
is
if
that
they
just
don't
taking away
receive
the
it,
barriers altogether.
yeah, yeah. And we that's the only part that we can control, that we can take care of.
Mm,
Because
mm.
if they can't receive it, that's them. That
Yeah, that's right. That's
it's
right.
all
And
them.
it's, yeah, that's right.
And if they and in the case of performances, there's so many audiences that are so scary. They wouldn't be there if they didn't want to. They
Mm,
didn't. It doesn't matter if they paid the price of a ticket. They still, if they don't feel like it, if it, then they'll be having dinner with their family. They'll be walking their dog. They'll
mm,
be going to the
mm,
gym. They'll be doing the thing they want to do. They won't
mm.
be there. And we can't control how they show up, and because it's on them, and that's okay.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
Wow. So so much here. So If you um if you were to help people in this audience, if they were to look for how they could work with you, what do you have coming up?
Well, I have a cut. It's funny. I have a kind of cut two tracks that run through my work. One is working with people that want to use their singing voice more,
Yes.
and the other is reconnecting with their speaking voice. So there's that kind of public speaking, performance anxiety type of thing. Although I hate the term public speaking, but you know, and then there's the reconnecting with your singing creativity, that kind of plot. And you can find it all at my website. But Begin to Sing is the class that, and basically it's a digital course, but with 5 week live class element as well over
Mm,
Zoom.
mm,
So I've realized in the past when I've tried to deliver classes that are just live classes,
mm.
I can never give everybody all the things I want to give them. You know, like the class ends up being too long, or, you know. So if I put it into a digital course as well, it's like, okay, there you can go and listen to this meditation or download this thing. And that
Yes.
just takes the pressure. So then in the class, we can really just be together. People can practice things, ask me questions. So that's the format of how my stuff works.
Mm,
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah, and those offerings can be found right on your website.
Yeah. Your free
All
voice.
there,
Yeah.
perfect. And that's just
Yeah.
down in the show
Yeah.
notes for anybody who
Thank
wants to
you.
connect to Julia. What would you tell somebody who is in the first stages of this, finding finding out that there's something more in the closet, or something, or they
Mm.
want to release their voice and it's in the closet? What would be your first course of action?
Oh, I think I always love the magic wand question for this. Like, if you could wave a magic wand and have the kind of relationship with your voice that you wanted to have, like, what would that be? Because I think that can really start to open the doors of what you really, and then when you've written that down, you thought about that, what will soon follow is all the reasons why you can't have it. Oh, but I don't have time. Oh, but I've left it too late. Oh, but I need to have, I'm tone deaf. Oh, but, you know, just notice that, again, that's your ego just trying to keep you safe, right? Because the ego wants to keep the persona intact, right? Wants to keep you in the tribe and does not want you to change. The change is scary for the ego. So that's why all that comes up, which means it's good stuff. So if there's a lot of resistance, it's like, yeah, that's the good stuff there. And just start noting your dreams, just starting to feel,
Mm,
what images or symbols are coming up for you. And
mm,
can you imagine yourself in this kind of future place? There's actually a meditation on my site called The Wall, or Creative Blocks, or something. Oh, I need to put it more clearly. But there's a great meditation in there for you to see yourself on the other side of this block. And that's a nice place to start.
mm,
Mm.
beautiful. I love that. And yeah, we'll have to look up your meditation. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for being
Thank you for
on the
having me on.
show, Julia. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you,
And
Lydia. It's been
if
lovely.
and if any of you again want to connect with Julia, write down to the show notes. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. That was Julia Norton. And if you want to connect with Julia, you can go right down to her website in the show notes. You can always send a question here to this channel also, and I'll help to connect you to somebody if that is ever something that you can't find because, whatever happens, you can't find that anymore, that link that I put in. So, anyway, I appreciate you and I appreciate your introspection that I know you're doing during these shows about, how does this affect me, and what can I give to the world? What can I give to myself to lift myself in the world? If you liked this show, please hit like. And if you haven't done it already, please gently push the subscribe button. and I'll see you next week. Ciao.
Bum ba da da dee da da dee da 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 dum. Bum ba dee da dee da da ba da 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 ba dum. Bum ba da dee da 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 dee da 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 dum. Bum ba da dee da ba da 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 dum. Ba da da.